She stood there, hand trembling, cheek stinging, surrounded by the shocked gasps of the first-class cabin. A pregnant woman, humiliated and physically assaulted at 30,000 feet by a flight attendant who thought she was just another entitled passenger in a seat she didn't belong in. But as the flight attendant, Brianna, sneered and raised her hand for a second strike, she had made a fatal miscalculation. She didn't know that the crying woman holding her belly wasn't just a passenger. She was the wife of the man who owned the very plane they were standing on, and the text message that just landed on the pilot's iPad was about to change everything. This is the story of Flight 402 and the slap that cost a woman her entire life. The rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of JFK's Terminal 4, mirroring the storm that was brewing inside Maya Sterling's stomach. At 7 months pregnant, everything was an ordeal. Her swollen ankles, the aching curve of her lower back, and the sheer exhaustion of traveling alone. But today was supposed to be different. Today she was flying home to London on the flagship carrier Ventura Airways to surprise her husband Julian for their 5th anniversary. Maya adjusted the strap of her oversized beige cashmere cardigan, shielding her baby bump from the biting air conditioning of the terminal. She wasn't dressed in the flashy designer logos usually seen parading through the priority lanes. She wore simple black leggings, comfortable sneakers, and a messy bun. To the untrained eye, she looked like a tired college student or a frazzled mom flying economy. And that was exactly how Brianna Vance, the senior purser for Flight 402, saw her. Brianna stood at the entrance of the aircraft, her red lipstick perfectly applied, her uniform pressed to military precision. She had been flying for Ventura for 20 years. She was the queen of the cabin, a woman who ruled her metal tube with an iron fist and a fake smile. She prided herself on maintaining the standards of first class, which often meant keeping out anyone she deemed riffraff. When Maya approached the gate holding her boarding pass, Brianna didn't even make eye contact. She was too busy chatting with the first officer, laughing a little too loudly. "Excuse me," Maya said softly, extending her phone with the digital boarding pass. Brianna's eyes flicked down, scanning Maya's comfortable attire with open disdain. She didn't see the diamond ring on Maya's finger. It was turned inward due to the swelling. All Brianna saw were sneakers in the first-class lane. "Economy boarding is in 40 minutes, honey. Zone 4. Brianna said, her voice dripping with a sickly sweet condescension. She pointed a manicured finger toward the crowded seating area where hundreds of tired passengers waited. "I know," Maya said, her voice steady despite her fatigue. "I'm in seat 1A. Brianna let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. She snatched the phone from Maya's hand, not bothering to be gentle. She stared at the screen, hoping to find a glitch, a fake, or a mistake. Maya Sterling. Seat 1A. First class suites. The screen didn't lie, but Brianna's prejudice did. "Upgrade?" Brianna asked, arching a sculpted brow. "Employee pass, friends and family." "Paid," Maya said simply. She reached for her phone back, but Brianna held it for a second too long, forcing Maya to step uncomfortably close. "Right," Brianna muttered, finally releasing the device. "We'll try to keep the noise down. We have important clients flying with us today. Senator Graham is in 2B, and I don't want any disturbances." Maya blinked, taken aback by the rudeness. "I intend to sleep the entire way," she whispered, stepping past Brianna onto the jet bridge. As Maya walked down the aisle, she could feel Brianna's eyes burning into her back. The aircraft was the new Airbus A350-1000, the jewel of the fleet. The first-class cabin was a sanctuary of soft leather gold accents and privacy doors. Maya found 1A, a suite that felt more like a small apartment than a plane seat. She exhaled, dropping her heavy tote bag onto the ottoman. She struggled for a moment, trying to lift her carry-on into the overhead bin. Her baby bump made the leverage difficult. She looked around for help. A younger flight attendant started to move toward her, but Brianna's voice sliced through the cabin. "Sophia, the champagne needs to be iced. Now." Sophia froze, looking apologetically at Maya, then scurried to the galley. Brianna walked slowly down the aisle, stopping right next to Maya, who was still struggling with the bag. Brianna crossed her arms, watching. She didn't offer to help. She simply watched the pregnant woman strain. "If you can't lift it, you should have checked it," Brianna said icily. Maya dropped the bag, breathless. "Could you please help me? I'm pregnant and I'm a flight attendant, Mom, not a baggage handler. Union rules. If you hurt your back, that's a liability. If I hurt mine lifting your heavy bag, I'm out of a job. Figure it out, or we check it to the hold." Maya felt the heat rise in her cheeks. It wasn't the rules, it was the tone. It was the sheer malice radiating from this woman. With a grunt of effort that made her abdomen tighten painfully, Maya shoved the bag into the bin and slammed it shut. She sat down, trembling slightly. She grabbed her phone and opened her text thread with Julian. "On board. Tired. The purser is a nightmare. Can't wait to see you." She deleted the part about the purser. She didn't want to worry him. Julian was currently in London, dealing with a massive merger for his private equity firm, Sterling & Co., which, unbeknownst to the crew, had quietly acquired a majority stake in Ventura Airways 3 months ago. The deal was confidential, set to be announced the following week. Technically, Maya was the first lady of the airline, but right now, to Brianna Vance, she was just an annoyance in seat 1A. The flight was delayed on the tarmac. A technical issue with the cargo loading system kept the plane grounded for an extra 45 minutes. The temperature in the cabin began to rise. Maya pressed the call button. Her throat was parched. The hormones were making her dehydrate faster than usual. A minute passed, then 5. The blue light above her suite blinked insistently. Across the aisle, a man in a bespoke suit, Senator Graham, seemingly raised his hand. Brianna appeared instantly, a bottle of Dom Perignon in hand. "Senator," she cooed, pouring the golden liquid with practiced elegance. "So sorry about the delay. Can I get you some warm nuts? Perhaps a pillow for your back." "Thank you, Brianna. You're a gem," the senator replied, sipping his drink. Brianna beamed, turning to leave. As she passed 1A, Maya spoke up. "Excuse me, miss." Brianna stopped her back, stiffening. She turned slowly, her smile vanishing instantly. "Yes. I've had my light on for 10 minutes, Maya said, trying to keep her voice polite. "Could I please get some water, with ice?" Brianna sighed a loud theatrical exhalation through her nose. "We are currently on the ground, ma'am. Service hasn't officially started. We have to prioritize safety checks." "You just served him champagne," Maya pointed out, gesturing to the senator. "The senator is a global services member and a frequent flyer. We have protocols. I just need water. Please." "I'm feeling a bit faint." Brianna rolled her eyes, not bothering to hide it this time. "Fine. I'll see what I can do." She disappeared into the galley. Maya waited. 10 minutes later, the plane finally began to push back. Brianna walked through the cabin, doing safety checks. She walked right past Maya without stopping. "My water?" Maya asked as Brianna breezed by. "We are taxiing. Sit down and buckle up," Brianna snapped. Maya clicked her seatbelt, her hands shaking. She was dizzy. The thirst was becoming a physical pain. She closed her eyes, telling herself to just breathe. It's an 7-hour flight. Just survive it. Once they reached cruising altitude, the smell of warm food wafted through the cabin. Maya was starving. She hadn't eaten since lunch, and for a pregnant woman, skipping meals was a recipe for disaster. Sophia, the kinder flight attendant, began distributing the menus. When she reached Maya, she offered a warm smile. "Here you go, Mrs. Sterling. We have a lovely sea bass tonight." "Thank you, Sophia," Maya said. "Could I get that water now?" "Please." "Oh my God, you haven't got it yet." Sophia looked horrified. "I'll get it right now." Sophia rushed to the galley. Maya heard hushed whispering, then the sharp hiss of Brianna's voice. "She can wait, Sophia. Do not let her run you. She's one of those new money types. Probably used miles. Serve the senator his starter first. But she's pregnant, Brianna, and she's pale. Do as I say." Maya gripped the armrests. She didn't want a scene. She hated confrontation. But this was becoming dangerous. Finally, Sophia emerged with a glass of water. She set it down quickly, looking fearful. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Maya drank the water in one gulp. "Thank you." The meal service began. Brianna took the orders. She started at 1A. "Chicken or pasta?" Brianna asked, staring at the wall above Maya's head. "I thought there was sea bass," Maya asked, looking at the menu. "We ran out." You ran out?" "You started with me. I'm in 1A. "Pre-orders, honey. Senator Graham and the gentleman in 3K pre-ordered. You didn't. So chicken or pasta? I'm allergic to mushrooms. Does the pasta have mushrooms? It's a truffle ravioli, so yes." "Okay, is the chicken safe? It comes with a mushroom sauce." Maya stared at her. "So I can't eat either of the main courses." Brianna shrugged. "You should have requested a special meal online. That's not my problem. Can I just have the bread and maybe a salad then?" "We're short on salads." Maya felt tears pricking her eyes. It was the hormones, yes, but it was also the sheer cruelty. "Fine. Just the bread." Brianna turned away, smirking. As she walked to the next seat, Maya heard her mutter loud enough to be heard, "Entitled princess. Thinks she owns the plane." Maya grabbed her phone. She needed to tell Julian. This was unbelievable. She connected to the onboard Wi-Fi. "Julian." I'm literally shaking. "The purser, Brianna Vance, is refusing to feed me and won't give me water. She's being incredibly aggressive. I'm scared to ask for anything." She hit send. 3,000 miles away, in a glass-walled boardroom in London. Julian Sterling's phone buzzed against the mahogany table. He was in the middle of signing the final papers for the Ventura acquisition. He glanced at the screen, and his blood ran cold. Julian was a man of immense power, but he was known for his calm demeanor. However, reading that his pregnant wife was being starved and bullied on his own airline triggered a rage he hadn't felt in years. He didn't reply to Maya immediately. Instead, he opened a different app on his phone, the direct line to the Ventura Operations Center. Back on the plane, the situation was about to explode. Maya, feeling nauseous from hunger, remembered she had a protein bar in her carry-on. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up to open the overhead bin. "Sit down," Brianna shrieked from the galley. The entire cabin jumped. The senator looked up, startled. "I need to get food from my bag since you won't feed me," Maya said, her voice trembling but loud. Brianna stormed down the aisle. "The seatbelt sign is on. You are disobeying crew instructions. That is a federal offense. The sign is off," Maya pointed at the ceiling. The light was indeed off. Brianna's face turned a mottled red. She had been caught in a lie. "I am the purser. If I say sit down, you sit down. You are being disruptive and aggressive. I will have you restrained if you don't lower your voice." "I haven't raised my voice," Maya cried, clutching her belly as a wave of dizziness hit her. "You are bullying me." "Bullying?" Brianna laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "I am maintaining order. You have been a problem since you stepped on this plane. Look at you sweatpants in first class. We know you don't belong here." "Excuse me," Senator Graham spoke up, removing his noise-cancelling headphones. "Miss Vance, the lady, is just trying to get a snack. The sign is off." Brianna spun around, her expression shifting instantly to a mask of polite deference. "Senator, please don't interfere. This passenger has been verbally abusive to the crew since boarding. I'm just trying to keep you all safe." Maya gasped. "That is a lie, a total lie." Brianna turned back to Maya, her eyes dead and cold. She stepped into Maya's personal space, her perfume cloying and thick. "One more word," Brianna whispered low and menacing, "and I will have the pilot divert this plane, and you will be arrested. Do you understand me? You are nobody. I run this flight." Maya looked at Brianna. She saw the name tag, Brianna Vance, Senior Purser. "You're going to regret this," Maya whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Is that a threat?" Brianna's voice rose to a theatrical screech. "Did you all hear that? She just threatened me." Brianna reached out and grabbed Maya's wrist, ostensibly to force her to sit down. "Don't touch me." Maya pulled her arm back instinctively. And then it happened. The cabin of Flight 402 seemed to hold its breath. The hum of the Rolls-Royce engines faded into the background, replaced by the electric tension crackling between the pregnant woman and the purser. Brianna stood frozen for a split second, her hand hovering in the air where Maya had recoiled from her grip. To Brianna, this wasn't a woman pulling away from an unwanted touch. It was an act of rebellion. It was a challenge to her 20-year reign. In Brianna's twisted logic, Maya's refusal to be manhandled was an assault on her authority. "You struck me," Brianna gasped, her voice trembling with a fabricated rage. She stepped back, clutching her own chest, as if she were the one in danger. "You just assaulted a crew member." Maya's eyes went wide, reflecting pure confusion. I didn't touch you. I just pulled my arm away." "Liar!" Brianna screamed. And then the unthinkable happened, fueled by adrenaline and a career's worth of unchecked power trips. Brianna stepped forward. She didn't think about the cameras. She didn't think about the witnesses. She only thought about putting this nobody back in her place. Brianna's hand lashed out. It wasn't a stumble or an accident. It was a sharp, calculated, open-handed slap across Maya's face. Crack! The sound was sickeningly loud in the quiet, luxury cabin. It echoed off the leather bulkheads. Maya's head snapped to the side. She gasped a sound of pure shock and stumbled backward, losing her footing. Her lower back hit the edge of the suite's ottoman, and she crumpled to the floor, clutching her cheek. For 10 seconds there was absolute silence. Senator Graham dropped his fork. His mouth hung open. The businessman in 3K lowered his newspaper. Even the air in the cabin felt heavier. Maya sat on the floor, stunned. Her cheek burned with a fierce, throbbing heat. She tasted copper. She had bitten her lip. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation. She curled inward, wrapping her arms around her baby bump, instinctively trying to protect her unborn child from the violence of the world outside. Brianna stood over her, breathing heavily. For a fleeting second, a look of terror crossed her eyes, as she realized what she had just done. Striking a passenger was the cardinal sin. It was immediate termination. It was jail time. But Brianna Vance was a survivor. She knew there was only one way out: control the narrative. "She bit me," Brianna yelled, looking wildly around the cabin at the shocked passengers. "You all saw it. She lunged at me. It was self-defense. I had to subdue her." "She did no such thing." Senator Graham stood up, his face red with indignation. "You just struck a pregnant woman. Are you insane?" "Sit down, Senator," Brianna barked, her voice cracking. "This is a security situation. Sophia, get the restraints. Now." Sophia, the young flight attendant, came running from the galley, her face pale as a sheet. She looked from the weeping Maya on the floor to the manic Brianna. "Brianna, surely we don't need restraints?" Sophia stammered, her hands shaking. "She is a threat to the safety of this flight," Brianna hissed, spittle flying from her mouth. "She is unstable. She attacked me. If you don't restrain her, I will write you up for insubordination, and you'll never fly again. Do it." Sophia looked down at Maya. Maya looked up, her eyes pleading. "Please," Maya whispered. "Please don't. I'm just pregnant. I'm hungry. I can't," Sophia whispered. "Useless." Brianna shoved Sophia aside. She grabbed the plastic zip-tie cuffs from the emergency kit herself. She loomed over Maya like a vulture. "Get up. Get up now, or I drag you to the jump seat." Maya sobbed, trying to scoot away on the carpet. My husband knows," she choked out. "Your husband?" Brianna scoffed, snapping the plastic cuffs to test them. "Honey, unless your husband is God himself, he can't help you now. You're going to be waiting for the FBI when we land." Brianna reached down, grabbing Maya's wrists, roughly twisting them behind her back. Maya cried out in pain as her shoulders were wrenched. "Stop it!" the senator shouted, stepping into the aisle to physically intervene. "Back off, Sir Federal Regulations," Brianna screamed, holding the cuffs like a weapon. "Interfering with a crew member during a security incident is a felony." The senator hesitated. He knew the law. Even if Brianna was wrong, if he touched her, he could be arrested too. He stood helpless, watching a tragedy unfold. Maya squeezed her eyes shut, feeling the cold plastic bite into her wrists. She felt utterly abandoned. Julian, she thought. Where are you? 4,000 miles away. The atmosphere in the boardroom of Sterling & Co. had shifted from celebratory to icy cold. Julian Sterling stood by the window staring out at the London skyline, but seeing nothing. His phone was pressed to his ear. On the other end was the Chief of Operations for Ventura Airways. "I don't care about protocol," Julian said, his voice dangerously low. "My wife is on flight 402. She just texted me that she is being starved and threatened. I want to know what is happening in that cabin. Now." "Mr. Sterling," the operations chief stuttered. We can't just call the cabin crew and ask if they are being rude. The captain is in charge, unless there is an emergency." "There is an emergency," Julian cut him off. "The emergency is that I own 51% of your company, as of this morning, and if my wife sheds one more tear, I will liquidate the entire board of directors before the sun sets. Connect me to the cockpit, immediately." There was a silence on the line, followed by the frantic typing of keys. "Connecting you via SATCOM now, sir. Priority 1 channel." High above the Atlantic, inside the cockpit of Flight 402, Captain Dave Miller was sipping his coffee, watching the waypoints tick by on the navigation display. It was a smooth flight, boring even, just the way he liked it. Suddenly, the silence was shattered. Ding, ding, ding. A bright red light flashed on the communications panel. Priority uplink. Captain Miller frowned. That light was reserved for hijackings, bomb threats, or war declarations. He exchanged a worried glance with his first officer, Ken. "Is that company?" Ken asked. "It's the emergency line," Miller said, putting on his headset. He toggled the switch. "Flight 402, Captain Miller speaking. Go ahead." The voice that came through the headset wasn't the usual dispatcher. It was a man's voice, deep cultured and trembling with suppressed fury. "Captain Miller, this is Julian Sterling." Miller froze. He knew the name. Everyone in the industry knew the name. The rumors had been flying for weeks that Sterling was buying the airline. "Mr. Sterling," Miller stammered. "Sir, is there a problem with the aircraft?" "The problem, Captain, is in your first-class cabin. Seat 1A. Mrs. Maya Sterling." The captain's heart skipped a beat. He checked his passenger manifest on the iPad mounted to his left. He scrolled to 1A. Maya Sterling. "I have her on the manifest, sir. What is the issue?" "The issue," Julian's voice turned to steel, "is that my pregnant wife just messaged me saying your purser, Brianna Vance, is refusing her food water and is threatening her. I want you to go back there, right now." Miller felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. Brianna. He knew Brianna. She was efficient, but she was a bulldog. He had heard complaints about her before, but nothing like this. "Sir, I'm sure it's a misunderstanding." "Captain." Julian interrupted his voice, dropping an octave. "Listen to me very carefully. If my wife is harmed, if she is distressed, I will hold you personally responsible. You are to relieve Purser Vance of her duties immediately. You are to ensure my wife is treated like the Queen of England for the remainder of this flight." "Do you understand?" "Yes, sir. Understood." "I'm holding on the line. Go." Captain Miller ripped his headset off. He looked at Ken. "Take the controls. I have to go back there. Now!" "What's going on, Dave?" Ken asked, eyes wide. "Brianna just declared war on the new owner of the airline," Miller said, unbuckling his harness. "And I think she's about to lose." Back in the cabin, the situation had reached a fever pitch. Brianna had successfully zip-tied Maya's hands behind her back. Maya was still on the floor, weeping silently, her head bowed in defeat. Brianna stood over her hands on her hips, looking like a conqueror. "Now," Brianna announced to the horrified cabin. "Since you all want to take her side, let this be a lesson. No one disrupts my flight. I don't care who you are." She grabbed Maya's arm to haul her up. "Get up. You're going to the galley jump seat where I can keep an eye on you. Get your hands off her." The voice boomed from the front of the cabin like a thunderclap. Brianna spun around. Captain Miller stood in the doorway of the cockpit, his cap missing his face, thunderous. He wasn't looking at Brianna with the usual camaraderie of a co-worker. He was looking at her with pure horror. Brianna, misreading the room, entirely smiled. "Captain." "Thank goodness. I've just detained a disruptive passenger. She assaulted me. I need you to radio ahead for police at Heathrow." Captain Miller walked down the aisle. His steps were heavy and fast. He ignored Brianna. He walked straight past her and knelt down on the floor next to Maya. Brianna's smile faltered. "Captain." "She's dangerous. Silence!" Miller roared, not looking up. The captain looked at Maya. He saw the red handprint blooming on her cheek. He saw the swelling of her lip. He saw the plastic zip ties biting into her swollen wrists. He felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't just a passenger. This was the owner's wife. "Mrs. Sterling," the captain said, his voice gentle and shaking. "I am so sorry." Maya looked up, her vision blurry with tears. She hit me," she whispered. The captain's jaw tightened. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small pocket knife, and carefully cut the plastic ties. Maya's arms fell forward, and she rubbed her wrists, sobbing with relief. Miller stood up and turned to face Brianna. The entire first-class cabin watched, captivated. Brianna looked confused. "Captain, why did you release her? I told you she's a threat." "She's nobody. Brianna," the captain said, his voice deadly quiet. "Do you know who this woman is?" Brianna rolled her eyes. "Some economy upgrade who thinks she's special. This woman," the captain pointed to Maya, "is Maya Sterling. Her husband is Julian Sterling." Brianna frowned. "So who is Julian Sterling?" The captain stepped closer to Brianna, forcing her to take a step back. "Julian Sterling is the CEO of Sterling & Co. As of this morning, he signed the papers to acquire Ventura Airways." Brianna's face went slack. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "He owns the airline, Brianna." The captain continued, his voice ringing through the silent cabin. "He owns this plane. He owns the uniform you are wearing. And most importantly, he is currently on the satellite phone in the cockpit, waiting for me to tell him why his pregnant wife is handcuffed on the floor." The color drained from Brianna's face so fast she looked like a corpse. Her knees actually buckled, and she grabbed the back of a seat to steady herself. "No," she whispered. That's not possible." "Senator Graham." The captain turned to the man in 2B. "Did you witness what happened here?" "I certainly did." "Dave," the senator said, his voice crisp. "I saw Miss Vance deny this woman food and water. I saw Miss Vance verbally abuse her, and I saw Miss Vance strike her across the face while she was seated. It was an unprovoked assault." The captain nodded grimly. He turned back to Brianna. Brianna was shaking, now her hands trembling violently. "Captain, please. I didn't know. I thought she was wearing sneakers. I just—" "You judged her," the captain said, "and you judged wrong." He reached out. "Give me your badge." "What?" Brianna choked. "Your crew badge, and your scarf. You are relieved of duty immediately. You are no longer the purser of this flight. You are a passenger. And considering you assaulted a customer, you will be seated in the rear galley jump seat under guard until we land." Brianna started to cry. "Dave, please, I have 20 years. My pension. You can't do this." "I'm not doing this, Brianna," the captain said, snatching the ID badge from her uniform. "You did this. Now get out of my sight before I arrest you myself." Sophia, the young flight attendant, watched with wide eyes. "Sophia," the captain commanded, "escort Ms. Vance to the rear. Then come back here. You are now the acting purser." As Sophia led a sobbing, stumbling Brianna down the long aisle of the plane, past the economy passengers, she had so often looked down upon a few people who had overheard the commotion, actually started to clap. But the drama wasn't over. The captain turned back to Maya, who was being helped into her seat by the senator. "Mrs. Sterling," the captain said, kneeling beside her again, "we have a decision to make. We are over the Atlantic. We can continue to London or, if you are injured, I can divert this flight to Gander or Shannon. It's your call. Your husband is waiting for an update." Maya touched her cheek. It throbbed. She was exhausted. She just wanted to go home. I just want to see Julian," she whispered. "Please, just get me to London." "Copy that," the captain said. "We will make up time, I promise you." He stood up, looking at the stunned passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disturbance. Drinks are on the house for the remainder of the flight. Please relax." He went back to the cockpit to deliver the news to Julian. Brianna sat in the back of the plane, strapped into a hard, uncomfortable jump seat next to the toilets. The smell of chemical disinfectant filled her nose. She buried her face in her hands. She knew her career was over, but she didn't know that Julian Sterling wasn't just going to fire her. He was going to destroy her. The remainder of the flight was a blur of hushed tones and anxious glances. The atmosphere in the first-class cabin had shifted entirely. Where there had once been the clinking of silverware and the rustle of newspapers, there was now a solemn, almost reverent silence. It was as if the passengers collectively realized they were witnessing a pivotal moment in the lives of everyone involved. Maya lay reclined in her suite, a cold compress pressed gently against her swelling cheek. Sophia, the young flight attendant, who had been promoted to acting purser in the chaos, hovered nearby like a guardian angel. She brought fresh water, extra pillows, and even a small box of chocolates from her own personal stash, trying desperately to make amends for the cruelty of her former boss. "Is the baby okay, Ma'am?" Sophia asked for the 10th time, her voice laced with genuine worry. Maya nodded slowly, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. "He's kicking. I think he's agitated because my heart rate is up, but he's moving. That's a good sign." "We'll have paramedics waiting the second the door opens," Sophia promised. Captain Miller radioed ahead. "Priority clearance." Indeed, inside the cockpit, Captain Miller was flying the Airbus A350 like a man on a mission. He had requested a high-speed descent into Heathrow, a maneuver usually reserved for medical emergencies. Air traffic control, alerted to the high-profile nature of the incident involving the airline owner's wife, had cleared the airspace. Flight 402 was cutting the line, bypassing the usual holding stacks over London. In the rear of the aircraft, the reality was starkly different. Brianna Vance sat in the jump seat, isolated and fuming. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a toxic mix of denial and indignation. In her mind, she was still the victim. She was the one who had to deal with difficult passengers for 20 years. She was the one who kept the cabin safe. How dare they treat her like a criminal? "It's her word against mine," Brianna thought, biting her thumbnail. Nobody saw the slap clearly. It was a chaotic moment. I'll say she lunged. I'll say I blocked her. The union will back me. They have to. She didn't realize that in 3K, the businessman had been recording the entire aftermath on his phone. She didn't realize that Senator Graham had already drafted a witness statement on his iPad. Brianna was plotting a defense for a war she had already lost. The fasten seatbelt sign chimed. The captain's voice came over the intercom, but it lacked his usual "Welcome to London" cheer. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our final descent into London Heathrow. We have been granted priority landing. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Upon arrival, I must ask that everyone remain in their seats until authorities have boarded and cleared the aircraft. Thank you for your cooperation." The wheels touched down on the wet tarmac of Heathrow with a firm thud, sending a spray of water up against the fuselage. The reverse thrusters roared, slowing the massive beast. As the plane taxied, it didn't go to a normal gate at Terminal 3. Instead, It was directed to a remote stand far away from the prying eyes of the general public, but perfectly positioned for the convoy of black SUVs waiting on the apron. Maya looked out the window. Through the rain-streaked glass, she saw the flashing blue lights of the Metropolitan police cars, and standing right in front of them, oblivious to the rain soaking his expensive wool coat, was a figure she knew better than anyone: Julian. The plane came to a halt. The engines whined down. The silence that followed was heavy. Usually this was the moment passengers stood up, grabbed bags, and crowded the aisle. Today nobody moved. They waited. The forward door, L1, opened. The cool, damp English air rushed in. 2 uniformed police officers boarded first, their faces grim. They were followed immediately by a man who radiated a terrifying kind of power. Julian Sterling stormed onto the plane, his eyes scanning the cabin frantically. "Maya!" he shouted, his voice breaking. Maya unbuckled her belt and stood up, shaky on her legs. "Julian!" He rushed to her, bypassing the stunned officers, and wrapped her in a hug so tight it almost lifted her off the floor. He buried his face in her neck, breathing in her scent, verifying she was real, she was there. Then he pulled back. His hands came up to cup her face. His thumbs brushed the angry red welt on her cheek. His expression shifted from relief to a cold, volcanic rage. "She hit you," Julian whispered, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "She actually hit you." "I'm okay," Maya sobbed, the adrenaline finally crashing. "I just want to go home." "We are going home," Julian said, his voice hardening. "But first I need to handle this." He turned to the police officers. "Where is she?" Captain Miller stepped out of the cockpit. He looked exhausted. "Mr. Sterling, she is in the rear galley secured." "Bring her here," Julian commanded. "No, wait. I want her to walk the length of this plane. I want her to see exactly who she assaulted." The officers nodded and headed to the back. A few moments later there was a commotion in the rear. Brianna was being marched up the aisle. She wasn't handcuffed yet, but the officers were gripping her arms tightly. She held her head high, trying to maintain some shred of dignity, but her eyes were darting around nervously. When she reached the first-class cabin, she stopped. She saw the police. She saw the captain refusing to look at her. And then she saw the man holding Maya. Julian Sterling was tall, broad-shouldered, and had the kind of face that graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune. He looked at Brianna with the kind of disdain usually reserved for something stuck to the bottom of a shoe. "So," Julian said, his voice quiet, but carrying to every corner of the cabin, "you are the one who likes to hit pregnant women." Brianna licked her lips. "Sir, you don't understand. She was disruptive. I was following protocol. Protocol." Julian stepped closer. The air seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Is it protocol to deny a passenger water? Is it protocol to call a paying customer trash? Is it protocol to slap my wife? I didn't slap her." Brianna lied, desperate now. "It was an accident. She moved into my hand." "Senator Graham." Julian looked over Brianna's shoulder. "Is that true?" The senator stood up, adjusting his tie. "Absolutely not, Mr. Sterling. It was a vicious, unprovoked backhand. I am willing to testify to that in any court of law." Brianna turned pale. Julian turned back to her. "You are fired, Miss Vance. Effective immediately. You are banned from this airline for life. And you will be hearing from my legal team before you even make bail." He nodded to the officers. "Get her off my plane." One of the officers pulled out a pair of handcuffs. "Brianna Vance, I am arresting you on suspicion of assault and endangering the safety of an aircraft. You do not have to say anything. As the metal cuffs clicked around Brianna's wrists, real metal. This time not the plastic ones she had used on Maya. She finally broke. She began to wail, a loud, ugly sound of self-pity. No, you can't. I have a pension. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know. That, Julian said, cutting through her screams, is exactly the problem. You shouldn't have to know who she is to treat her like a human being. Brianna was dragged off the plane, her heels scraping against the floor, her cries echoing down the jet bridge. Julian turned back to the passengers. Everyone, I am deeply sorry you had to witness this. My team at the gate will be handing out vouchers for full refunds of your tickets today. Thank you for your patience. He scooped up Maya's bag. Come on, darling. Let's get you to the doctor. As they walked off the plane, Maya rested her head on Julian's shoulder. The nightmare at 30,000 feet was over, but the storm on the ground was just beginning. 3 days had passed since Flight 402 landed. The bruises on Maya's cheek had turned a dark, purplish yellow, a visual reminder of the trauma. Physically, the doctors had cleared her and the baby. The stress had been dangerous, but the little one was resilient. Emotionally, however, Maya was shaken. She flinched at loud noises. She couldn't look at a suitcase without feeling a wave of nausea. While Maya rested in their Kensington penthouse, Julian Sterling was at war. The boardroom of Sterling & Co. was transformed into a command center, usually used for mergers and acquisitions. The long oak table was now covered in witness statements, flight logs, and CCTV footage from the airport terminal. Julian sat at the head of the table. To his right was his chief legal counsel Mark Thorne, a man known in London. Legal circles as the Rottweiler. To his left was the new CEO of Ventura Airways, whom Julian had appointed that morning to replace the old regime that had allowed a culture like Brianna's to fester. Update, Julian said, staring at the photo of Maya's bruised face that lay on the table. The police have charged her with common assault and battery, Mark Thorne said, adjusting his glasses. But we are pushing for endangering the safety of an aircraft under the Aviation Security Act. That carries a maximum sentence of 5 years. The police are cooperative. The senator's statement sealed the deal. Good, Julian said. And the civil side? We filed the lawsuit this morning, Mark continued. We are suing for emotional distress, physical injury, and punitive damages. We are also freezing her pension assets pending the investigation into her conduct on previous flights. We've opened a hotline for past passengers to report abuse. What have we found? It's extensive, Julian, the new CEO piped up, looking uncomfortable. Since the story leaked to the press yesterday, we've had 50 emails. Brianna Vance has been terrorizing economy passengers for a decade. Verbal abuse, racism, theft of duty-free items. Management swept it under the rug because she was senior and kept the turnaround times fast. Julian clenched his fist. She was a cancer, and she's gone. What about her defense? The flight attendants union is trying to distance themselves, Mark said with a dark chuckle. Usually they defend their own to the death. But the video, Julian asked. The passenger in 3K. He uploaded it to YouTube an hour ago. It's already trending #1 worldwide. It shows the slap. It shows you confronting her. It shows everything. Julian picked up his tablet and opened the link. There it was. The shaky footage from the first-class suite. The audio was crisp. Crack. Julian watched his wife fall to the floor. He watched Brianna scream that she was bitten. He watched the zip ties come out. He turned the tablet off his stomach, churning. Make sure that video stays up. Julian said softly. "I want the world to see it. I want every airline employee to see it. I want them to know that this era of arrogance is over." Across town, in a dingy interview room at the Heathrow police station, Brianna Vance sat opposite her court-appointed solicitor. She looked a wreck. Her hair was unwashed, her makeup smeared. The arrogant queen of the sky was gone, replaced by a terrified middle-aged woman facing the ruins of her life. "They can't take my pension," Brianna croaked, her hands shaking around a styrofoam cup of lukewarm tea. "I earned that, Vance." The solicitor sighed, looking weary. "You have bigger problems than your pension. I've just seen the video." Brianna flinched. "It looks worse than it was. She provoked me." "The video shows you striking a seated pregnant woman who had her hands in her lap," the solicitor said bluntly. "There is no provocation in the world that justifies that in the eyes of a jury. And the victim is the wife of a billionaire who has hired the most aggressive legal team in the country." "So what do I do?" Brianna whispered. "You plead guilty," the solicitor said. "You apologize. You pray for leniency, because if this goes to trial, Julian Sterling will destroy you. He won't just put you in prison. He will ensure you never work again. He will bankrupt you with legal fees." Brianna put her head on the table and wept. She thought about the moment she saw Maya's sneakers. She thought about the moment she decided to exercise her petty power. She had made a choice to be cruel because she thought there were no consequences. She had bet her life on that choice. And she had lost. 2 weeks later, the disciplinary hearing was held at the Ventura Airways headquarters. It was a formality. Brianna was already charged criminally, but Julian insisted on it being done by the book. He wanted it on the official record. Brianna was released on bail to attend. She walked into the building she had worked in for 20 years. Her ID badge no longer worked at the turnstile. A security guard had to let her in. Her former colleagues, people she had flown with for years, turned their backs as she walked down the corridor. No one offered a smile. No one offered support. They knew what she had done. She entered the conference room. Julian was there, along with the HR directors and the union rep. "Brianna Vance," the HR director began reading from a file. "You are charged with gross misconduct, assault, and violation of safety protocols. How do you plead?" Brianna looked at Julian. He wasn't looking at her with anger anymore. He was looking at her with indifference. To him, she was already gone. Brianna's voice failed her. She cleared her throat. "I just want to say, I didn't know she was the owner's wife." Julian finally spoke. He leaned forward, interlocking his fingers. "That is your only defense, isn't it?" Julian asked softly. "That you didn't know she was powerful. If she had been a school teacher or a nurse or just a student, you think it would have been okay to slap her. You think it would have been okay to starve her." Brianna stayed silent. "You are fired," Julian said, "and I am personally ensuring that your name is added to the international no-fly list. You will never step foot on an aircraft again, Brianna. Not as crew, not as a passenger. You are grounded. Permanently." Brianna gasped. For a flight attendant, being banned from flying was a death sentence. It was her identity. It was her freedom. "You can't do that," she whispered. "I own the airline," Julian said simply. "I can do whatever I want. Get out." Security escorted Brianna out of the building. She stood on the curb, the grey London rain falling on her face. She had no job. She was facing jail time. She had lost her reputation, and she had nowhere to go. She looked up at the sky, watching a plane ascend through the clouds. It was a Ventura jet. She watched it disappear, knowing she would never be up there again. Back in the office, Julian's phone rang. It was Maya. "Hey." He answered, his voice softening instantly. "Hey," she said. "The doctor just left. He said the stress markers are down. The baby is fine." Julian let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Thank God. "Are you done there?" she asked. "Yes," Julian said, looking at the empty chair where Brianna had sat. "I'm done. Justice is served. I'm coming home." But the story wasn't quite over. There was one final twist of karma waiting for Brianna, one that not even Julian had orchestrated. The trial of R.V. Vance became the most talked-about legal event in London. The first-class slap, as the tabloids dubbed it, had transcended a simple assault case. It had become a referendum on class privilege and dignity. Brianna stood in the dock at the Old Bailey, trembling in a cheap grey suit. Her assets were frozen, her pension seized pending the civil suit. Her defense team had tried to paint her as an overworked employee dealing with a security threat, but the viral video of her striking a seated pregnant woman had decimated that argument. Now she prayed for leniency. She hoped for an old-school judge who might sympathize with the pressures of maintaining order. But when the court clerk announced the presiding magistrate, Brianna's blood ran cold. "All rise for Justice Deborah Halloway." A formidable black woman in her 50s swept into the room. She adjusted her robes and peered down at the defendant with piercing eyes. A flicker of recognition passed between them. Brianna felt the floor drop out from under her. She remembered this woman. 5 years ago. A flight to Barbados. This woman had been in economy asking for an extra blanket for a sick child. Brianna had sneered, told her blankets were for paying customers, and threatened to have her removed. That woman was Deborah Halloway before she was appointed to the High Court. Justice Halloway didn't recuse herself. She didn't need to. She simply looked at Brianna with a gaze that stripped her bare. "Ms. Vance," the judge began, her voice echoing in the silent courtroom, "you have been found guilty of assault and endangering the safety of an aircraft. But this court has also considered the character evidence. We have received over 100 affidavits from former passengers describing a pattern of sadistic behavior. You targeted the vulnerable because you thought they were powerless." Brianna sobbed quietly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "You are not sorry for what you did." Judge Halloway cut her off. "You are sorry that the woman you slapped turned out to be the owner's wife. If Mrs. Sterling had been a nobody, you would still be terrorizing people today." The gavel raised. "Brianna Vance, I sentence you to 18 months in prison. Furthermore, you are ordered to pay £50 and £1,000 in damages to the victim. Your assets will be liquidated to cover this cost. Take her away." As Brianna was handcuffed and led down to the cells, she looked back at the public gallery. Maya Sterling was there holding Julian's hand. She didn't look triumphant. She just looked sad. She watched Brianna, a woman who had thrown away her life for a moment of petty power, disappear into the dark. Karma, however, wasn't done with Brianna Vance. She was released after 9 months for good behavior, but freedom proved to be a harsher prison. At 52, with a violent criminal record and global infamy, Brianna was unemployable. No airline would touch her. Even retail stores turned her away. The only job she could find was at a grim intercity bus terminal in Birmingham, working the night shift at the ticket counter. It was a rainy Tuesday night. Brianna sat behind the scratched plexiglass, wearing a cheap polyester uniform that smelled of stale grease. She looked 20 years older, her face lined with bitterness. A young woman approached the counter, looking exhausted. She was wearing worn-out sweatpants and holding a crying baby. "Excuse me," the woman whispered. "The bus is delayed. Do you have any water? My baby needs formula, and I don't have cash for the machine." Brianna looked at her. The old Brianna would have rolled her eyes and said, "Not my problem." But then Brianna glanced up at the TV screen on the wall. A news segment was playing. There was Maya Sterling. She looked radiant, holding a healthy 1-year-old boy. She was cutting the ribbon on the Sterling Initiative, a foundation dedicated to helping underprivileged mothers travel safely. Beside her stood Julian, looking proud. The caption read, "Airline heiress turns trauma into hope." Brianna stared at the screen. That woman was living a life of love and purpose. And Brianna was here in a dirty bus station alone with nothing but the consequences of her cruelty. She looked back at the young mother. Brianna swallowed the lump in her throat. She reached under the counter, pulled out her own water bottle, her only drink for the shift, and slid it through the slot. "Here," Brianna whispered, her voice cracking. "Take it. It's free." "Thank you," the woman said, surprised. "God bless you." The woman walked away. Brianna sat alone in the booth, watching the rain streak against the glass. Finally understanding the lesson that had cost her everything. It costs nothing to be kind, but it can cost you everything to be cruel. This story is a brutal reminder that character is how you treat people who can do nothing for you. Brianna Vance thought her uniform gave her the right to judge a book by its cover. She saw a pregnant woman in sneakers and saw a target. She didn't know she was looking at the woman who signed her paychecks. But the real tragedy isn't that she lost her job. It's that she lost her humanity long before she ever slapped Maya Sterling. In the end, Maya walked away with her family and her dignity, while Brianna was left with nothing but the bitter taste of her own prejudice. If this story gave you chills, or if you believe that karma always comes back around, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. What would you have done if you were in the captain's shoes? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story about justice being served. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.